There has been a lot of negative discussion around the Six Flags Cedar Fair merger in the recent months among coaster enthusiasts. With the tanking stock price and rather questionable financial decisions, the skepticism is completely warranted in my opinion. To me, this change has to get back to its roots of doing the thing it does best, which is building roller coasters, as those to me are what ultimately get people to come to these properties and spend their money. Today, though, I don't want to be negative, and instead just make a lighthearted video about every Six Flags Parks coaster lineup and what roller coaster model I would like to see be added next. For each park, I'll break down their coaster lineup, what holes they need to fill, what I would personally like to see, then all in all, based on what Six Flags has done in the past, give a prediction of when and what could be added to the park's lineup next. I want this video to be kind of a segue into me covering more roller coaster current events on this channel, as I really just intend for this video to be me spewing thoughts about where I view each park's lineup and what holes it needs to fill. And along the way, critique each park's investments it's made up to this point, and give some insight into which coaster models are my favorite and which ones I think could be home runs for these parks should they be installed. In this video, I'm going to do my best to mix my preferences with realism. Obviously, Six Flags has not worked with RMC or Intamin in a long time, and it's suspected that they will not build anything new from those guys. But if I think an RMC or Intamin is the best fit for a park, I will absolutely come out and say that, even though it may not be my prediction in the end for them. So for each park, I'm just going to overall discuss my thoughts on their lineups and what I think is the best fit, then make a prediction on which model I would like to see and when I think we could see it. Without further ado, let's dive right in. In alphabetical order, here's every roller coaster that I would like to see at Six Flags Parks. First up is kind of a sad one, and that's California's Great America. In case you're unaware, Six Flags has an agreement with the city of Santa Clara that this park must close by the 2028 season. Sadly, this was just part of the lease agreement between Six Flags and the city of Santa Clara, and Six Flags has just deemed it too pricey to extend the lease. And that is rather sad, because I do think this park has a pretty strong lineup right now. A B&M Invert, a world-class GCI Woody, and one of the OG RMC Raptors makes for a very strong top 3 for a park of this size. Even worse yet, this park was slated to add a B&M Hyper prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but unfortunately, that project was scrapped due to lack of funding, and that kind of coincided with Cedar Fair's soon announcement that the park would close at the end of the 2028 season. Within the span of a few years, it felt like Cedar Fair's plan for this park did a total 180 from it being a frequent investment park to its sudden closure. Even today, I would still choose a B&M Hyper to be the next roller coaster built at this park, should the lease be continuing for whatever reason. This park already has 2 roller coasters that focus on quick ejector pops in Railblazer and Gold Striker, and adding a B&M Hyper that adds some height with a 200-foot plus coaster with constant floater airtime would have been the perfect fit for this park in my opinion. Should TGA's life be continuing, I'm 100% going to the B&M Hyper well, whether it be 4 across or 2 rows staggered, doesn't matter to me. B&M Hyper would have been perfect here, and even the Cedar Fair executives agreed way back then prior to COVID. Well, it has been pretty quiet on the CGA front, and I haven't really heard anything about the lease expiring. I sadly just cannot see this park surviving beyond the 2027 season, and I predict that this park will close its doors at the end of 2027 season and receive no more significant investment from Six Flags Corporation. I would have loved to live in the world where a B&M Hyper was built here, but I just don't think that'll happen. However, Flight Deck and Railblazer are prime relocation candidates, so if you can't make it to California's Great America in the next 2 years, don't worry, I think you'll be able to get on these 2 rides at different Six Flags locations following this park's closure. To put a bow on California's Great America, in my ideal world, they would be opening a B&M Hyper coaster in 2028, but due to the circumstances this property finds itself in, I predict that they will get nothing and will close its doors by 2028. From a completely sad outlook to a very positive one, let's next talk about Canada's Wonderland. In 2025, they debuted Alpenfury, a Premier Rides launch coaster, and this coaster was a smash hit from the day it opened. Frequent 2-hour lines, and to my complete surprise, finds itself in the world top 50 for Captain Coaster. To be exact, at number 28, making it by far Premier's best roller coaster that it has ever built, at least according to Captain Coaster. With that Captain Coaster ranking, it makes it impossible to deny that Canada's Wonderland has found that elite roller coaster that it was looking for to round out its lineup. This is the kind of investment that I want to see Six Flags make more, as just it is an overall excellent roller coaster that ranks in the world top 50 and thus brings in the crowds, as it has frequently had over 2-hour wait times. It's not that gimmicky, it's straightforward, it's simple, and it's with a trusted manufacturer. Nothing fancy about it, it's just an overall very good roller coaster, and they didn't overthink it with this one. With the addition of Alpenfury, believe it or not, using the same methodology I used in my first ever YouTube video, Canada's Wonderland is now ranked the 5th best roller coaster lineup in all of planet Earth. It is truly amazing what one world-class roller coaster can do for your roller coaster lineup, as overall, Canada's Wonderland's lineup is just so much more well-rounded now that this ride is here. with 3 other B&Ms rounding out a very solid supporting cast, including one that is arguably elite in Leviathan. Canada's Wonderland's lineup is in a great spot moving forward. However, with 3 of its top 4 being B&M roller coasters that are more drawn out, this park has plenty of holes that it can still fill in its next roller coaster, and I believe Cedar Fair should focus on filling it pretty soon, as it's pretty obvious that this park's investments return very well. While Alpenfury is undeniably elite, its main focus is pacing and inversions, and in my opinion, Canada's Wonderland really just needs that roller coaster that is focused on ejector airtime, that really maxes out that airtime score that I use in all my roller coaster reviews. They have a B&M looper already, and 2 large-scale B&M roller coasters, and a Premier Rides launch coaster with tons of inversions. So they need some ejector airtime, and while Alpenfury is already the star, another one cannot hurt, which is why for me personally, I would love to see an RMC iBox here. Whether it be a conversion of Mindbuster or Wild Beast, or a ground-up installation, I just think that the overall fit is perfect, as it would provide an experience that nothing in Canada's Wonderland really does right now, with ejector airtime out the wazoo, a fantastic ejector-filled first drop, and an overall super smooth ride experience. Well, I would love to see them go hyper hybrid, and if you do that, you probably get a guaranteed top 10 ride in the world. I just don't think Canada's Wonderland really needs to go to that extent even. Something like Airy Force 1 size, or even an iBox version of Wildfire would be perfect. Obviously, the RMC is kind of a pipe dream here, as there's a law in Canada that basically says RMC can't build this roller coaster on their own and has to use a Canadian company to do it. In addition, Six Flags Entertainment just does not appear willing to work with RMC right now for whatever bullcrap reason. It's decisions like not working with RMC is what really has Six Flags shooting itself in the foot right now. But that's a conversation for probably another video. Regardless, the RMC in Canada, I just have a really hard time seeing happening, but I do think it would be the best overall fit at Canada's Wonderland. So, the next place I would look for Canada's Wonderland in terms of adding another attraction with some ejector airtime, and get ready, because I'm going to predict this a lot in this video, would be the Vekoma Tilt Coaster. I know Canada's Wonderland already has a dive coaster, but to me, the GP really don't perceive the two as being similar at all. The trains are completely different, the look is completely different, the layout following is completely different, everything is completely different. And the Vekoma Tilt is just a much better overall ride for enthusiasts than a B&M dive coaster. Because you already have Alpenfury, I don't think you need to go overkill with this layout or size either. Something like Siren's Curse here would be absolutely fine in my opinion. There's nothing else like it around. Six Flags' only installation of it so far has gone absolutely flawlessly. It's a crowd pleaser, the enthusiasts and GP love it alike. I just don't see anything wrong with this going to Canada's Wonderland, as it would provide a unique sensation of ejector airtime, would be different from Alpenfury and all its other roller coasters, and has that gimmick that Six Flags absolutely loves. Before I make my final prediction, I would like to throw one more long ball out there, and that is the Zamperla Lightning Triple Launch. You may think I'm crazy, but hear me out. First of all, I don't think I really need to explain why this would be a smash hit at just about any park that Six Flags chooses to install it at. Obviously, I think only the bigger properties are equipped to handle this, but either way, this thing would just be an absolute people magnet and would be drawing people in from everywhere. Secondly, part of me is like, well, Six Flags already went through the headache of the original prototype of this thing, and Zamperla has this exact ride on their website, attempting to sell more of them. This ride proved last year that it can operate reliably, and that first year issue should never have to be replicated again because, like I said, you already solved it. So yes, if I was on the Six Flags leadership panel, I would definitely consider more installation of these, although for Canada's Wonderland here, I am not going to predict it just because, like I said, it is a little bit more on the far-fetched side. Because of Alpenfury's success, I do not think Six Flags will wait very long to go back to the Canada's Wonderland well and put another investment in that will see a great return in a Vekoma Tilt Coaster. So for Canada's Wonderland, I predict that they will receive a Vekoma Tilt Coaster in 2029. Up next is Carowinds, and Carowinds to me is in a very precarious situation. To me, it has all the makings of being a gem in the Six Flags chain, with the star of the show already in Fury 325, and 3 other solid supporting cast thrill rides in Copperhead Strike, Afterburn, and Intimidator, which all hold their own for their respective models. However, the most recent of those, Copperhead Strike, was built in 2019, which at this point is already 7 years ago. I really don't understand why Six Flags Entertainment has not come back to this park yet, as they've been well overdue for a coaster for I would say at least 2 years now. So that makes me question whether Six Flags actually sees this as a core park or not, but anyway, I digress. I actually see a lot of similarities with this park to Canada's Wonderland's lineup, as it's got the B&M Giga with 2 solid supporting B&Ms, one of them being looping, one of them being a hyper, and then 1 additional roller coaster that has a launch and inversions in Copperhead Strike mirroring Alpenfury. The only difference is that here, the Giga is the star, whereas at Canada's Wonderland, the launch looping coaster is the star. So, for Carowinds, I'm going to go with something very similar for what I said for Canada's Wonderland. Either RMC Hurler, make it just like Twisted Timbers, whether it be an exact clone or have some small differences, I don't care. Personally, I think it would be pretty cool if Joe Draves put his own flavor on this RMC Hurler, as we can compare it to the Alan Schilke RMC Hurler 4 Hours Up 95. Regardless, if you put a Twisted Timbers caliber RMC right next to Fury, you're looking at probably 2 top 20 roller coasters sitting right next to each other. That will just give Carowinds a 1-2 punch that can compete with just about any other park's 1-2 punch out there. RMC Hurler would fill the role of having another roller coaster with inversions, fill the role of tons of ejector airtime, and just fill the role of having a potential other stud roller coaster or even a high-tier supporting cast roller coaster if they choose to go that way. Then obviously the second option is to go with the Vekoma Tilt Coaster. And honestly, Carowinds is already teasing a 2027 attraction. I very well think that could be a Vekoma Tilt Coaster finally going on the old Nighthawk plot. This has been rumored for a while, and I think a Vekoma Tilt makes even more sense here than it does at Canada's Wonderland because Carowinds doesn't have a dive coaster. But overall, Vekoma Tilt, you're getting the complete layout along with that GP gimmick, and these are just going to be a no-brainer for so many parks in this chain. With Copperhead Strike, I don't think you need to go for another launch coaster, and if you're not going to go with RMC, I think for Chain Lift Hills, this Vekoma Tilt is your next best bet. I also consider the Zamperla Lightning triple launch for the same reasons as Canada's Wonderland, as well as a fresh GCI Woody, but I think the Vekoma Tilt has so long been rumored for 2027 that I don't think it's worth going that far off the beaten path. So for Carowinds, I'm going to go with a Vekoma Tilt coaster coming in 2027. Up next, we have Cedar Point, and to be honest, this one is kind of a tough one. They have by far and away the best roller coaster lineup on the planet right now, sitting 13 points clear of any other park in the world. Not only is their lineup stacked, but it's also incredibly well-rounded. Different heights, different speeds, different first drop styles, different launch styles, different lift styles, coasters with airtime, coasters with inversions, coasters with floater, coasters with ejector. They just have one of everything, it feels like. So because of that, finding a hole to fill with their next roller coaster is just kind of difficult. I think Cedar Point would be a great opportunity to revive 2 coaster models that haven't been installed in a while. Those 2 models being the S&S 4th Dimension coaster and the Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster. I think both of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll explain anyway. For the Intamin prefab Woody, Cedar Point's only wooden roller coaster right now is Blue Streak, and they could really benefit from a modern wooden roller coaster. I think they're really missing that modern wooden roller coaster pace and feel in their lineup, and I just don't think a modern GCI would be eye-popping enough to be at Cedar Point. So this would be the perfect place to revive the Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster, as you could really get up to scale of what Cedar Point might demand of a new wooden roller coaster. And I just think in general of paying more money up front for the Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster, you're bettering your investment because you think it's going to last longer and be easier to maintain than a traditional GCI. And for the S&S 4D, it's pretty simple. These are some of the top-rated roller coasters in the world, and Cedar Point doesn't have one, nor is there any like it in the area, so I think the overall fit here is perfect, but obviously it's just a question of how realistic it is. And unfortunately, I just can't convince myself that either this nor the Intamin prefab have a real chance of being Cedar Point's next roller coaster. So that takes me back to the drawing board, and I really had to think hard about this one, but then it hit me that Cedar Point does not have a roller coaster where riders sit in the flying position. Now, we have choices of manufacturers here, but Cedar Point already has 4 B&Ms, and I'm not sure how stylistically the B&M flyer would separate itself from something like Raptor or Rougarou, at least in terms of ride flow and appearance. So that brings us to Vekoma, and I think a launched flying coaster, kind of like Fly but with no theming and on a much bigger scale, would be absolutely perfect at Cedar Point, especially in the Snake River plot. Having this coaster run from the original Snake River Falls plot over to Millennium Island and back again would really breathe some fresh new life into the Millennium Midway section and redistribute some crowds there. Even in Cedar Point's near-perfect coaster lineup right now, this ride would plug the hole of being a flying coaster and add yet another multi-launch roller coaster at America's Roller Coast. And it would turn Cedar Point's currently godly top 5 into a downright unbeatable top 6. And right now, there's nothing that tells me Six Flags wouldn't consider one of these from Vekoma, given how Vekoma's current projects have gone for them. However, even though Cedar Point is clearly still the golden child, I do think with their heavy investments received in 2024 and 2025, it could be a little bit until we see something like this. I'm thinking 2030, 2031 timeframe, which would make it 5 years after the installation of Siren's Curse, and that kind of lines up with the gap between Steel Vengeance and Top Thrill 2. However, when investments are made at Cedar Point, they often pay off, hence the massive crowd sizes that have been there for the past few summers. So it wouldn't shock me if Six Flags comes back here sooner, but for now, I'm going to predict that Cedar Point will get a new-gen Vekoma flying coaster in 2030. Up next, we have Dorney Park, and if you know me personally, I think Dorney Park was very deserving of the investment it got in 2024. However, the choice of the investment, a mini B&M dive coaster, makes absolutely no sense and is absolutely terrible in hindsight. Dorney had to wait almost 20 years to finally get another big investment roller coaster, and this is what they got. The park already has 2 B&M looping coasters, so why not add a third one for a hefty price tag here? It just makes absolutely zero sense. The only thing that this is adding to the lineup is a steep drop, and you could have gotten that from so many better coaster models, and probably even at a cheaper price tag. Even more soft, B&M's execution of this ride sucked, as it's too short, the layout is really uninspired, and worst of all, the rattle in the back row is absolutely unacceptable for a new steel roller coaster in the year 2024. So all in all, Six Flags spent $30 million to give Dorney Park a roller coaster that is worse on Captain Coaster than the other 4 thrill coasters that are already there. Just mind-boggling levels of incompetence here. This is the kind of roller coaster that Six Flags loves though. Just something to get people in the door, but nothing that's nowhere near good enough for people to ride and say, hey, I need to come back to this park and ride this, like, tomorrow. At the $30 million estimated price tag, I could probably rattle off 10 models that could have been a more realistic fit here. A Gerstlauer Eurofighter, a Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, an RMC Raptor, a Vekoma Tilt Coaster, a Chance Hyper GTX, a Premier Rides Launch Coaster, a Gravity Grip Wooden Coaster, a GCI Wooden Coaster. I could probably keep going, but you get the point. The worst part of all of this is that Dorney is going to have to wait another very long time at another crack at getting a very good roller coaster that could be its star. Six Flags had a perfect opportunity to do that with this $30 million, and they completely blew it. I think all those models that I just rattled off are in play here, along with an RMC conversion of Thunderhawk, but with the park's poor performance since they built Iron Menace, I think we're going to have to wait a very long time to see that. And who even knows if this park will even remain in the Six Flags chain, as I fear this one could be on the chopping block. That said, when I predict their next roller coaster, which would probably be in the 2036 area, who even knows what roller coaster models will be popular then? So for now, I'll predict, let's say, a Premier Rides launch coaster. Dorney desperately needs a launch coaster and a star, and Premier proved they can do that with Alpenfury. Plus, I think they could do it at a price tag that would be affordable for Dorney, so I think it would make a lot of sense if they were to go in that direction. Up next, we have Frontier City, and this is the first park of a couple on this video where I just don't see a new thrill coaster ever coming here. And who knows what the future of this one will look like under Six Flags ownership and if they'll consider selling this one. I think considering this park's target audience though, this lineup is decent for what it is. And if they were to decide to build something new here, I would definitely consider a Penguin Trek style B&M family coaster or a Snoopy's Soapbox Racer style Vekoma family boomerang. I think in best case scenario you could get a scaled down version of Big Bear Mountain, but even that is tough to see here, and to be honest, even Penguin Trek might be a bit of a stretch here. So that narrows us down to just the Vekoma family boomerang, and to be honest, I kind of like that here. So I'll predict that they'll get a Vekoma family boomerang, let's say in 2033. It's not much, but it's better than Six Flags potentially doing nothing at all. Up next is King's Dominion, and you may be thinking that I'm going to criticize Rapterra in the same way I did Iron Menace, but no. The key difference here is that King's Dominion has not one, but 2 superstar level attractions, both in Captain Coaster Top 20 as of this video. Those 2 obviously being Twisted Timbers and Pantherian. So honestly, Rapterra is not a bad addition as a supporting cast roller coaster. Could they have done better in my opinion? Yes, but by no means is it anywhere near the level of poor investment that I think Iron Menace is. Yes, the execution from B&M still has to be better, but this park desperately needed a launch coaster, and going to B&M for a wing coaster when Busch Gardens Williamsburg right down the street doesn't have one, I see the vision. So for me, the King's Dominion mission is pretty simple. Continue to build out that supporting cast beyond Dominator and Rapterra, and don't build anything that Busch Gardens Williamsburg has. So my mind immediately points toward 2 things. One, obviously, being the Vekoma Tilt Coaster. BGW doesn't have one of those. It would be eye-popping, yada yada yada. The other one being, and I think I'm going to pick it, is the Mack Multi-Launch Coaster. I think Mack proved to the world that they can really up their game with Stardust Racers. This is the first time Mack has built a non-spinning launch coaster that breaks into a lot of people's top 20s. I guess you can say Helix did that too, but Stardust Racers is still the cream of the crop, even if the 2 tracks were separate in my opinion. Stardust Racers really has that airtime focus. I don't think you have to do that since you already have Twisted Timbers, but just doing an overall very well-rounded Mack multi-launch that has that same feel as Stardust Racers, even on a single track, would be absolutely perfect here in King's Dominion's Anaconda plot. Unless Mack goes crazy, it's probably not surpassing Pantherian or Twisted Timbers, but it doesn't have to. It would just be the clear leader among the supporting cast, and overall give people that third reason to come back to King's Dominion. King's Dominion does not have a roller coaster with multiple launches, and overall, this Mack coaster would have more variety than any of King's Dominion's current coasters, and would be the least repetitive. You could also go spinner here, but I really don't think you have to, and I think something like a single-track Stardust Racers would be still an elite enough ride. However, because King's Dominion just got Rapterra in 2025, and I'm still not sure how Six Flags views this park, if it's sellable, a core, or somewhere in between, I think we could have to wait a little bit to see something like this. For King's Dominion's major thrill coasters, it was an 8-year gap between Pantherian and Twisted Timbers, and a 7-year gap between Twisted Timbers and Rapterra, so I'll predict another 7-year gap here, which means my ultimate prediction for King's Dominion is a Mag multi-launch coaster, Stardust Racer style, without the dueling, in 2032. Up next, we have Kings Island. Now, for Kings Island, they've had the Vortex plot sitting empty since 2019 when the ride closed forever. With the addition of Orion in 2020, people figured that it might be a while till that plot got filled, but I don't think anybody envisioned that it would be this long, as we're now in 2026 and it's still sitting empty. Prior to Orion in 2020, they got Mystic Timbers in 2017, Banshee in 2014, and Diamondback in 2009, so roughly 3 to 5 year gaps between major roller coasters. It's now 2026 and we haven't gotten anything since 2020 with Orion, so Kings Island is officially in the past due category for a new roller coaster. Now for Kings Island, there's two main things I'm going to be looking to do with their next roller coaster. For one, it's got to be something different than what Cedar Point has, and number two, it has to be a star. I know Mystic Timbers, Diamondback, Orion, and the Beast all have their own cult followings, but 65th, 81st, and 84th, and 149th respectively, those all trend more towards elite supporting cast rather than a star of a big park like Kings Island. Kings Island right now to me just kind of feels like that pre-Steel Vengeance Cedar Point, where you just have a bunch of elite roller coasters, but not one you can point to and say, hey, this is a real contender to be the best in the world. And I think every big park needs one of those. My model has Kings Island ranked as the 4th best coaster lineup in the world right now, and the one thing that's really holding it back is just that none of their roller coasters are a star, whereas all the parks ahead of them, and even most of the ones below them, have one or multiple. And Kings Island really needs a launch coaster in my opinion. I know they have Flight of Fear, but I think a lot of people don't really view that one as a major contributor to this lineup. And with Flight of Fear ranked below the Bat, Captain Coaster would agree. So, launch coaster, Cedar Point doesn't have it or need it, needs to be a star, and oh, look, it's already been rumored here for a while. Bingo, Mag Extreme Spinner. Likely will have multiple launches, would go perfect in the Vortex plot, gives Kings Island another inverting steel coaster, and as long as Six Flags doesn't cheap out, a 100% true superstar. You could probably also get away with a traditional Mag launch coaster here, but why not go spinning when Kings Island doesn't have a spinner or 4D coaster here already? As for when, I want to say hopefully soon, but I don't think it's in the cards for 2027 because I feel like we would have been catching wind of it by now, so I'll go with 2028. Unfortunately, a small part of me says it could be longer, but I'll be nice and say 2028, so Mag Extreme Spinner in 2028 for Kings Island. Up next is Knott's Berry Farm, and this one's a tough one because this is the first park I'm doing in this video that really has a land problem. I would guess they're close to, if not at 100% developed, which means every time something new comes in, something old's gotta come out. This is also the park in the Six Flags chain that is closest to a true theme park, so I don't think they're necessarily trying to shoot for the stars in terms of having the best roller coaster lineup. In my model right now, they rank 26th in terms of overall roller coaster lineup, and I think for what Knott's is trying to do, that's perfectly acceptable, but like all roller coaster lineups, I think we can do better. This park also has the problem of having Magic Mountain right down the street, and I don't want to put anything here that they already have, which in Magic Mountain's case is a lot of coaster models that you're taking off the table. The first place my mind goes when thinking about Knott's is, God forbid anything happened to Accelerator, replacing it with a modern Intamin Blitz coaster would be a no-brainer. I don't think you have the room here to go Velocicoaster style, but something like Batman Gotham City Escape or even Red Fire would be perfect in my opinion. You would just have to make it compact enough to fit Accelerator's current plot. However, I really don't want my prediction to hinge on one of the last Intamin Accelerators closing, so I'll just keep that in the back of my head for right now. Going back to the drawing board, trying to get Knott's a thrill coaster that they don't already have, my mind immediately goes to Vekoma. They can get me a glass smooth ride with some ejector, some inversions, and overall a nice mix that Knott's doesn't really have right now. To solve the land problem, I think you could take out Coast Rider and relocate the Scrambler and the Flyers, and that would make enough room to very tightly squeeze in a Vekoma Wildcat to come to Knott's Berry Farm. If you're unfamiliar with Vekoma Wildcat, look up Phoenix at Forup Summerland. It's also on the screen in front of you now. In terms of fit, Knott's Berry Farm doesn't have a Vekoma. The only other above-the-track roller coaster with multiple inversions is Hang Time, and this would be their only steel coaster with multiple ejector airtime moments. As for it would slot in the lineup, Phoenix at Forup Summerland is currently ranked number 51 on Captain Coaster. That would make it the best roller coaster at Knott's, although I would still refrain from calling it a superstar level roller coaster. If the land weren't an issue, I would probably go B&M Hyper or something else over 200 feet, but because it is, I think a Vekoma Wildcat would be a very good fit here and be completely unique to all of its other roller coasters. As for when, I really don't have any idea. I don't get the sense Six Flags is in a rush to add another roller coaster here, but I do think this park is in their future plans and they will get something eventually, so let's call it 2030. So for Knott's Berry Farm, I predict a Vekoma Wildcat in 2030. Up next, we have Ronde. And while I have options for what Ronde could do, I doubt any of them actually come to fruition. Back in the early 2000s, Six Flags did dabble in adding thrill coasters here, but they haven't done one since 2006, which kind of means to me that they gave up on the property. Since they built Goliath in 2006, there have been more closures than there have been new rides. Maybe under Six Flags' new leadership team, maybe they view Ronde a little bit differently, but I highly doubt it. With the park being landlocked and Canada's Wonderland not too far away that they're heavily investing in, I think they are content with leaving this park the way it is, or putting it on the chopping block. So while I don't actually envision any new thrill coaster coming here, I'll still discuss a couple. To solve the landlock issue, I think it's pretty simple. Just remove Ednor. It's kind of a Knott's approach of when they took out their Vekoma Boomerang and then replace it with Hang Time, just upgrading an old Vekoma with something new. Speaking of Hang Time, I think a Gerstlauer Infinity or Eurofighter would be great there, or a Vekoma Wildcat, just as I discussed for Knott's. And then, if you really wanted to launch one more all-out assault to see if Ronde was actually a profitable park or not for Six Flags, you could RMC Monster. I talked about the hurdles between Canada and RMC in my Canada's Wonderland section, but if RMC Monster wouldn't seriously change the outlook of Ronde, I don't know what would. Whether you kept it dueling like Twisted Colossus or went Iron Gwazi style and combined the two tracks into one, either way, you're probably getting a top 20 roller coaster on the planet, and like I said, if that doesn't change the outlook on the Ronde, then you're probably just screwed 6 ways from Sunday. So what the heck? Nothing I predict will probably be realistic for Ronde, so why not go all the way unrealistic and do the thing every enthusiast would want to see that could potentially save this park from potential doom. So, for Ronde, I'll predict an RMC conversion of Monster in who even knows what year. I'm not predicting a year for this park. Up next, Michigan's Adventure, and believe it or not, I do not think Michigan's Adventure is on Six Flags' chopping block. For one, I just don't know what the buyer's market would be for a park like this, and I think Six Flags is content to just leave this park as is and let it appeal to families and be a low-profit park in the chain. I don't get the sense that because of the merger that Six Flags is just going to abandon all their smaller parks and only focus on the big properties. I think there's some real business value into hanging on to some of these smaller ones and just let them do what they do without much investment from corporate. Funny enough about Michigan's Adventure, Captain Coaster does not consider Shivering Timbers a star, but there is definitely a group of people out there that definitely do and would travel just to this park to ride it. Again, I think there is some business value in that. With that though, a lot of the business value comes from the fact that you probably don't want to invest a lot in this park and still have it turn a profit every year. For future roller coaster projects though, this obviously does not bode well. If there was an infinite money glitch, I would love to see Wolverine Wildcat be RMC'd, but there's just no way that happens. Other than Shivering Timbers, you have 2 looping steel coasters in Thunderhawk and Corkscrew that are rated equally bad on Captain Coaster. But like I said, I really don't think Six Flags has any desire to fix that or address it. So for any possible investment that Michigan's Adventure would get, I would think it would just be something family-oriented to keep the profit margin up while keeping expenses still low. So for that, I'm going to point to the Vekoma Family Boomerang. Obviously, Six Flags is comfortable installing these, and I think the cost is low enough that even Michigan's Adventure would be a candidate for it. So just like Ronde, I'm not going to predict a year, but for Michigan's Adventure, maybe they'll get a Vekoma Family Boomerang at some point. And to recycle a way overused and not that funny joke, maybe this is the year where Michigan's Adventure takes a break from adding a new park bench or trash can. Up next is Six Flags Darien Lake, and I kind of find this one in a similar situation as Michigan's Adventure, where they have enough for Six Flags to justify not selling it, and if you play your cards right, you can probably get a steady profit off this park every year. Their land situation isn't the best, but they're not as landlocked as Ronde or Knott's, and in terms of the lineup they have, overall, it's not bad. I have Darien Lake as the 81st best roller coaster lineup in the world right now, with its neighbors being Michigan's Adventure, Valleyfair, and the aforementioned Ronde. They have a Hyper, a Woody, an inverting Gerstlauer, a launched family coaster, and some old Vekomas and an Arrow. Just like Ronde and Michigan's Adventure, however, I just have a really hard time seeing Six Flags put their foot forward and really giving this park something new and exciting. Because again, I just think they're happy with the way it is. In terms of overall best fit, ignoring the dollar sign, I think this park could really use a B&M. Probably not a dive machine because they already have a Beyond Vertical in the Gerstlauer Eurofighter, but I think a wing or an invert would do numbers here, or even if they revive the floorless coaster. But because of B&M's noticeable drop in quality along with an expensive price tag, I just don't see that happening here in any universe. Another option a lot of enthusiasts as well as myself would have loved to see was a full RMC conversion of Predator, but the park opted not to do that, going with the GCI Titan retrack in certain sections. I see the vision, but it's pretty clear that Six Flags cheaped out and should have just let GCI Titan track the whole layout. I would have been really interested to see how that project turned out, and I guess it's still possible that GCI comes back and finishes it, but I really think that ship has sailed at this point. So back to square one again. Do I be bold and predict a thrill coaster here and try to find one that fits, or do I just keep it simple and predict a new family coaster, which is the far more likely scenario for this park? I want to keep my predictions going where I try to meet the best of both worlds in terms of what I would like to see and what will actually happen, and I noticed that Darien Lake does not have a Wild Mouse style roller coaster. And come to think of it, I think Zamperla did a great job with the Wild Mouse coaster at Cedar Point. I know this is not the most exciting prediction, but Cedar Point's Wild Mouse is currently the highest rated Wild Mouse on my list right now. And I know they don't have the best capacity, but the Wild Mouse at Cedar Point always having a line still indicates its popularity to me. I know it's not a huge crowd drawer, but at Darien Lake, that's not what it would be meant to do. It would be a crowd stabilizing attraction rather than a crowd drawing attraction. And like I said earlier in the video, I want to see more investments from Six Flags that are designed to create returning visitors rather than create one-time visitors. I think that's what this Wild Mouse coaster would do, in addition to filling the holes of a spinning coaster and another family coaster to help prepare the kiddos for something like Ride of Steel. And I genuinely think that this roller coaster would be something that has a good chance of coming to Darien Lake, and it wouldn't have to be too long until I could see it actually happening, just because the price tag on it would be so low. So for Darien Lake, I'll go with the Zamperla Wild Mouse opening in 2029. Next is Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, and like a couple parks we just did, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom also suffers from a massive land shortage issue. Unlike the previous parks, however, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom is the first park on this video, that I know of at least, that suffers from a strict height limitation, or nothing that they build can be over 150 feet tall. That's a little bit of a shame, because under this new Six Flags management, I would just say B&M Hyper for this park and call it a day. But instead, I have to think a little bit harder. This is a park I've seen a lot of people discuss, one potentially being up for sale, and I can kind of see that, being that the Bay Area is just super valuable right now. But they're already cashing out on California's Great America, so I think they're going to see this other park in the Bay Area as a great opportunity to keep a foothold in that market. Especially with this park's animal exhibits, there's a lot of avenues this park can go down that can create returning visitors. With a different vision of the new Six Flags and California's Great America being sold, I think it's possible that Discovery Kingdom ends up as one of the biggest benefiting parks from the merger. With that all said, I think a big new thrill coaster here is definitely on the board. And while I said land is an issue, a lot of their land does seem reconfigurable, especially if you remove Kong and shift around some of the park storage. Now, what would best fit in their lineup? They have an RMC, they have a looping B&M, they have a launch coaster, but it's only a Premier Ride Skyrocket 2, they have a launch coaster that goes forward and backwards, a 4D, a spinner, a boomerang, and a Vekoma SLC that I think will get removed for a new addition. Overall, not bad, but at 45th overall in my lineup ranking model, this park definitely has some room for improvement. A tough question I struggle to answer is what to do about Joker. Do I treat it like the star attraction, or do I shoot for a new star that eclipses Joker and Joker becomes the number 2? With Joker being regarded as one of the worst RMCs, I feel like I have to shoot for something that would surpass it. Intamin or Mach Hyper would really be my choices here, but again, the height limit prevents me from doing that. I'm also struggling whether to go lift hill or launched here. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom currently has a nice balance between the two, and I don't want to disturb it too much. For lift hill, I'm thinking Vekoma Tilt Coaster. For launch, I'm thinking either Mac Standard or Mac Extreme Spinner. I would be extremely happy with all of these, but because I want to live on the edge, I want to go with the Mac Extreme Spinner, with the caveat that the one that's coming to Great Adventure, the one that's rumored to be coming to Great Adventure in 2027, goes well. I know in the past, Cedar Fair has held grudges over manufacturers that have not delivered ride experiences as promised, so I really need this Extreme Spinner in 2027 to go well so that we can see more of them, so that parks like Six Flags Discovery Kingdom can be blessed with a superstar attraction. As for when I think we can see this, if I stand on my hot take that Six Flags Discovery Kingdom could become a high investment park, then they are officially overdue for a new thrill coaster, and I hope they would get it before 2030, as that would be 14 years since they RMC'd Roar into Joker. This is probably my boldest prediction yet, but I predict that the Six Flags Discovery Kingdom will receive a Mac Extreme Spinner in 2029. Up next, we have Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. And over the past 10 years or so, this park has subtly emerged as one of the top dogs in the Six Flags chain. Not only is it very well regarded by enthusiasts for overall experience and vibes, but its coaster lineup is 4th best among Six Flags parks and 15th best in the world. According to my model, at least. When you look at the lineup, what's not to love in terms of quality? They have 2 RMCs, an iBox and a Raptor. Not many other parks can say that. They have 3 B&M looping coasters, with Zero Man Krypton Coaster probably being the best of its type. And they have a decent supporting cast of family and kids rides as well. However, their only launch coaster, Poltergeist, was built in 1999, and while it has a respectable Captain Coaster rating, it definitely feels a little bit dated. Since Poltergeist's introduction in 1999, Six Flags Fiesta Texas' thrill coasters have been Lift Hill, Lift Hill, Lift Hill, Lift Hill, Lift Hill. So with that said, it's time for Six Flags Fiesta Texas to get a modern multi-launch coaster. I think that's fairly obvious, but the not so obvious part of this question is from who? There are 3 contenders to build this in my eyes: Intamin, Mac, and Premier. Starting off with Premier, we know this one is a realistic option because Six Flags just put one of these at one of their Premier parks. And to say that installation went well is an understatement, as Alpen Fury is one of the top roller coasters on the planet, according to Captain Coaster. Despite the success, though, Premier's track record is still pretty spotty, even considering the success of Alpen Fury. So the question then becomes, is Alpen Fury's Captain Coaster ranking an anomaly, or is this the dawn of a new age of Premier rides where they can consistently pump out top 50 launch coasters? Additionally, there are still some design concerns with Premier Ride's launch coasters, such as train design and capacity, which people have frequently complained about. If this decision was just based off of who Six Flags would obviously be most comfortable working with, Premier would be the choice. Up next, we have Mac, and this would be the second most realistic option, probably. Up until recently, Six Flags / Cedar Fair's most recent use of Mac was Copperhead Strike in 2019. Well, they didn't go back for a while, and it left me and many others confused as to what Mack may have did to sour the relationship, but there appears to be no bad blood, and Cedar Fair was just waiting for the right time to install the next Mack coaster, as it has been confirmed that Great Adventures 2027 edition will be from Mack Rides, which shows that Six Flags / Cedar Fair is still willing to work with them. As for what the ride quality would be, I still believe that Stardust Racers has a chance to be a manufacturer-changing ride for Mack. It showed that they can build a layout that is top 20 worthy, even without their spinning trains. With Stardust Racers being ranked higher than Alpenfury and Mack's more trustworthy track record, I think you would overall probably be getting a better ride from Mack than Premier. Then finally, you have Intamin. I think the build quality of an Intamin multi-launch coaster speaks for itself, as these are a lot of enthusiasts' top model right now, and if you build one, no matter the size, shape, theme, whatever, you're probably getting a top 20, bare minimum top 50 roller coaster in the world. For me, I probably still would go with the RMC iBox as best overall model, but I think if you did an enthusiast-wide poll, the Intamin multi-launch would be considered the top model for roller coasters right now. In the top 20 alone, Intamin multi-launch coasters take up spot number 3, 9, 13, 17, and 19. Very impressive. The question about this one all comes down to the willingness of Six Flags to add a new Intamin coaster for the first time since Pantherian / I-305 in 2010. What's interesting is that Six Flags, prior to the merger, did add an Intamin roller coaster in Quantum Accelerator that was set to open in 2025, but was since pushed to 2026. And that delay was just one of 4 problems that Six Flags Entertainment had with Intamin in 2025. Granted, Intamin is by no way the only ones at fault for these, but I do know for a fact that Intamin was involved in the Pantherian retheme, the Millennium Force reprogramming, and the issues with Georgia Gold Rusher. So while none of those did go well, and that probably even tense relations even more, it does show that Intamin still does have a working relationship with Six Flags, and that is further proven with all the retracking of El Toro they plan on doing this winter. So just to address this, Six Flags absolutely still does have a working relationship with Intamin. It's just, I think they're rightfully skeptical in going with a new Intamin installation, given all the issues that they still have to this day. That said, am I taking a risk on a new Intamin installation at Six Flags Fiesta Texas? If I was in charge, absolutely. Do I think Six Flags will actually do it? I don't know. This just goes back to what I was saying earlier about how Six Flags can't get out of their own way sometimes. I just wish Six Flags would go take some notes on how Universal works with Intamin, as both Hagrid's and Velocicoaster have gone relatively smoothly and are actively making people want to go back to Universal as we speak. There is not one shred of doubt in my mind that an Intamin multi-launch coaster, like Velocicoaster or Pantheon or whatever, would be an absolute home run at a park like Six Flags Fiesta Texas. While I decide which launch coaster to go with, I want to discuss one more potential option for Six Flags Fiesta Texas. As we know, Six Flags likes to do big B&Ms at all their marquee parks, and I don't see why Six Flags Fiesta Texas wouldn't be that. So, I think a B&M Giga, or even a Hyper Coaster since they don't already have one, could be on the table for this park. I actually think a big B&M Hyper or Giga that is focused on floater airtime and doesn't go upside down actually could be a better fit at this park right now than the 3 launch coaster types that I just listed. However, a B&M Hyper Giga is just more difficult to build for a couple of different reasons. Number 1, land. Six Flags Fiesta Texas could probably make this work, but they would have to get creative and or move stuff around. Number 2, Six Flags would have to believe that this is a core park in order to build something like this, and while I don't see a reason why they wouldn't think that way, we won't know that for sure, and that's the only way it comes here is if they're certain. And of course, unless the launch coaster has an obscenely long track length, it's likely going to be cheaper than the Giga, and probably even the Hyper. While I think this is the best overall fit, I just think one of those 3 launch coasters is far more likely to be Fiesta Texas's actual next roller coaster. Before my final decision, let's talk about when. Under Six Flags, Fiesta Texas was getting new thrill roller coasters about every 4 to 5 years. Will that continue under the new Six Flags? It's not certain yet, but I highly suspect it will be, as Six Flags has already shown a high interest in the Texas properties, already investing a significant amount of money into Over Texas, which we will get to in a few minutes. So I expect them to keep the current pace of investments, or at least close to it, which unless you count the retheme of Chupacabra, puts Fiesta Texas in the overdue category. I think 2027 is out, but 2028 has a good chance, I would say. For my final decision, as much as my heart would love to go with Intamin, I just can't predict that while keeping this video realistic, and it pains me to say that, but it's true. So, between Mack and Premier, I think I'm going to go with Mack. The reason being is that Alpenfury really focuses on inversions, whereas Stardust Racers focuses on airtime, and I just think Six Flags Fiesta Texas has enough inversions to go around and could use more of an airtime focus. So for Fiesta Texas, I'm going with the Mack multi-launch in 2028. And now we have Six Flags Great Adventure. I don't think I need to tell you what's been going on at Six Flags Great Adventure, but it's been the ire of all enthusiasts right now, as well as one of my home parks. To address the elephant in the room, as far as Kingda Ka goes, I don't want to talk about that too much in this video, but I do disagree with a lot of decisions they made regarding that ride's future. I don't want to go too far into it because it's really a topic for another video, but I would have brought in Zamperla to top thrill to it, rather than just destroy it completely. Or even if you didn't want to go with Zamperla again, there are probably other options you could have done that would have kept the top hat and some of the ride's basic components in place to save money. But like I said, I don't want to talk about that too much right now because it's a really hot topic and I don't want this video to get too far off track. I also know it's a thing for enthusiasts now to just try to come to this park and have a miserable time and just defecate on the place and say they're never coming back, but that just doesn't do anybody any good. I visited a bunch in 2025, and I think overall the park did the best that they could in the very bad situation that corporate put them in. I just advise people to take their anchor out on the right party and put this park in the position that it's in right now. Now, looking towards the future, this park just absolutely oozes potential. Even without King Knott, they have the 7th best roller coaster lineup in the world according to my model, and they have a full animal safari with an on-site hotel in that safari that allegedly gets booked for the entire summer. Also, this park is the first park in this video where we know that in 2027 they are getting a significant roller coaster, and we even know the manufacturer it's coming from. So as to not be boring, I'm just going to skip right past this one since we basically already know what it is and move on to what their next roller coaster could be after that. In my opinion, Six Flags Entertainment did so much damage to this park that even after this 2027 roller coaster, they should not wait beyond 2030 to revisit this park again for another large investment. In 2030, there are a bunch of options that you could do in my opinion. The first, which is kind of a no-brainer, is a B&M Giga Coaster. Six Flags Entertainment has these at all the major legacy Cedar Fair parks. So, to really put Six Flags Great Adventure on par with those, a B&M Giga would help point it in that direction. They do already have a Hyper though in Nitro, so I'd really like to see them go in the Fury direction where it stays low to the ground and focuses on twisting maneuvers rather than floater airtime. You have to be careful with this one though, because with the price tag of these, if you end up with something like Orion where you're more in the 80 range in world ranking rather than in the top 20, it's just a massive missed opportunity in my opinion. B&M Gigas are great rides, but at the price tag that they are going for right now, I just don't know if that's the smartest use of your money. Nor do I think it would be the best fit in Great Adventure's lineup in terms of filling holes. The next option that I know people would absolutely love, but I really question the likelihood of it, is the Intamin Blitz Coaster, of course. This would be the second coaster in the park's lineup that really tries to do everything in addition to Jersey Devil Coaster. Ejector airtime, weird maneuvers, fun inversions, and a great first drop / wow airtime moment. My only reservation is would Six Flags really put 3 launch coasters in a row at Great Adventure? They already put Flash Vertical Velocity, which is launched. And unless they have a large surprise hidden in 2027, that in all likelihood is going to be launched. So unless they really see the value in having a roller coaster with multiple forward launches, I just don't know. Or maybe Six Flags will join Universal in seeing that launch coasters really are the new way forward and start going with way more of those than lift hills. But if they end up going with an Intamin Blitz Coaster after all this time, I'll be really annoyed if they knock down Kaz Top Hat when they could have made something super sick by integrating it into a potential future Intamin Blitz Coaster. I know this is what everyone and their mother wants to see, but I do have my questions. Another one that crossed my mind is a Vekoma Tilt Coaster. If this were like Siren's Curse though, it would be a letdown to me, as this would really have to be a record breaker, surpassing a lot of Iron Rattler's records over at Six Flags Qiddiya. Like, I envision a Giga Vekoma Tilt Coaster taking the spot of the former Zumanjaro line. I know that kind of sounds like a corny idea, but come on, that would be an incredible roller coaster, and I can just see Six Flags executives sitting in their conference room absolutely salivating over that idea, just like they were with Tormenta. If Six Flags Entertainment was willing to try a B&M Giga Dive, I don't see why they wouldn't be willing to try a Vekoma Giga Tilt. It would be quite the spectacle to see, that's for sure. All 3 of these options would cost the big bucks, but I think overall in 2030, it would really keep Great Adventure trending in the right direction to go with one of these. But wait, I have one more. This is an absolute long shot. Everybody always poo-poos this idea coming here for some reason, but there is no doubt in my mind that the fit would be absolutely tremendous. And even with the 3 really good models I just listed, I have no doubt that this one would surpass those 3 in Captain Coaster. That's right, I'm talking about an RMC Hyper Hybrid taking the spot of the old Northern Star Arena. No, I'm not going to RMC El Toro, don't worry, that thing is safe, and really RMC probably couldn't make that any better than it already is. But a fresh new Hyper Hybrid roller coaster, I don't see what there isn't to love. In Captain Coaster, the 3 Hyper Hybrids right now rank number 1, 2, and 4. So, at Great Adventure, you're getting probably bare minimum a top 10, probably top 5 roller coaster, should you go with this. From a fit perspective, I don't see what the argument is here other than just Cedar Fair RMC relationship stuff. I've seen people say that an RMC iBox would be too similar to El Toro, but from either the GP or enthusiast perspective, I just don't see that at all. From a lab perspective, El Toro really focuses on sustained forces and longer drawn-out maneuvers, whereas RMCs are quicker, poppier, and focus on spamming as many elements as possible. Bang, 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 bang. RMCs can also go upside down, and its train is more capable of a lot tighter maneuvers than El Toro. So stylistically, I just don't see how the 2 run together at all. From a GP perspective, it's pretty simple. Just look at the 2 lift hills. No GP is going to walk up to this and think that these 2 are even remotely the same ride, especially with the truss style lift that RMC would likely use for this guy. I don't think the GP are that naive that you can't have two roller coasters with wooden structure at the same park. I mean, come on. Additionally, I think we often discredit how popular these rides are with the GP, as these almost always have the longest lines at their respective parks. I mean, look at that Steel Mentions line. That thing never gets below 90 minutes. Now, time for my final prediction. I want to preface that I would be very happy with any of the 4 models I discussed here, and I think it's got to happen by 2030 so that they can keep this park in the direction that they want it to go. I think probably the most realistic candidate is the B&M Giga Coaster, but damn it, I resisted the RMC prediction at Canada's Wonderland, I resisted it at Carowinds, and I'm going to resist it again later in this video, but I'll be damned if I resist it here. It would just be absolutely perfect. People would ride it one time and immediately come back the next day to ride it again, and all of a sudden, we have a top 5 roller coaster in the Mid-Atlantic in the United States. Is it unlikely? Sure, but I do think it has at least a little bit of life, otherwise I wouldn't be predicting it here. Six Flags Entertainment, please squash the beef with RMC. Both you and them would benefit from it so much. Oh, and in no way is this prediction swayed by the fact that this is my home park and this is the ride I want to see. That'd be a ridiculous accusation. So for Six Flags Great Adventure, I'm going with an RMC Hyper Hybrid in 2030. Six Flags Entertainment, please, I beg you. Up next, we have Six Flags Great America. After just opening Wrath of Rakshasa in 2025, Six Flags Great America all of a sudden finds itself with the 8th best roller coaster lineup in the world and the 3rd best coaster lineup among legacy Six Flags parks. And that's with their best coaster Goliath being ranked only 80th on Captain Coaster. When I look at this lineup, I really don't see a lot of holes to fill. They have 5 B&M coasters, a Hyper and 4 that go upside down, a launch coaster in Max Force, and a bunch of different wooden roller coasters, with one of those being an RMC. With Six Flags Great America being a likely marquee park under Six Flags' new management, I think the next logical step is to go for the Giga Coaster like all the other marquee parks in the Cedar Fair legacy chain. With Raging Bull being a twister hyper rather than an out and back, I think there's a lot of potential for an out and back Giga Coaster in the style of Fury 325. This park also doesn't have the most land, but I think you could make this work if you tried hard enough. My only real concern here is that Great America already has 5 B&Ms, and I just think you might want some more manufacturer diversity here. This hypothetical B&M Giga Coaster will be joining X-Flight, Batman the Ride, Raging Bull, Superman Ultimate Flight, and Wrath of Rakshasa. In my opinion, that is just too much B&M. So to solve that problem, I think this would be a great opportunity to give another manufacturer a shot at making a Giga Coaster. Either you could go with Intamin, and they could probably do either their 4 across design like Hyperion, or their 2 across design like Conda. These both would be different from previous Gigas that Intamin has done, but they at least have experience with the Giga height and speed. The only other manufacturer I would give a shot here is Mack, as they could probably make a Giga in the style of their current Mack Hypers, such as Hyperia or DC Rivals. I would be very intrigued as to see what Mack would do if given the opportunity to build a chain lift style Giga. If I were in charge, I would 100% go with an Intamin or Mack Giga for this park, just to give them a break from the B&Ms, but still give them the Giga Coaster that probably best fits their lineup. As for what else could fit their lineup, I think they could really use another launch coaster, but to be honest, I have a hard time picking a launch coaster model that in some way wouldn't duplicate what Max Force already does. For example, I would love a Premier Rides launch coaster here, but Alpenfury and Max Force are just too close together for them to exist at the same park in my opinion. Even from an appearance standpoint, from all the rolls to the train and track design, I think the GP would just look at these two and deem them very similar. Max Force overall just puts this park in a tough spot for adding a new launch coaster, as it checks off a lot of the boxes these launch coaster models check without being really a star itself, although I love Max Force and think it's a great ride. I think the only way you could separate a new launch coaster from Max Force is at minimum you need to have multiple launches, and preferably one of those launches would be backwards. Something like Pantheon or Two Tatis, but even those I think would have some bleed in with Max Force. If you want to go full send and combine the height of a Giga with a new launch coaster, you could go for the Top Thrill 2 clone, and while that would be a great fit here in my opinion, I just can't wrap my head around that happening. So I am going to abandon the launch coaster idea for this park because I can't just make up my mind on one that I would like, and while I would love to see an Intamin or Mack Giga, I think it will ultimately end up being a B&M Giga, which would make this park the ultimate king of B&M. As for when, this park has been getting new thrill coasters about every 5 to 6 years, and funny enough, I haven't predicted anything for 2031 yet, so I'll predict the first B&M in this video being a B&M Giga coming to Six Flags Great America in 2031. Up next, we have Six Flags Great Escape. This is a park that I had sworn off getting a new major addition ever again. However, I was forced to eat my words when they opened a Gravity Group family wooden coaster named Bobcat in 2024. Being that this park will never ever cater to anyone other than families, I think that's a great fit and addition to this park. That being said, it's probably the last thing y'all are getting in a while, and potentially the last thing you ever get from the Six Flags chain. When I look at Great Escape, when I see where it's located, the rides they currently have, and who they currently appeal to, I just find it pretty difficult for this park to continue under Six Flags Entertainment's current leadership. If I had to pick one park that I was most confident in them selling, it would probably be this one, although I don't know what the buyer's market would look like for it. For the sake of this exercise, though, let's predict something. I kind of think this park is pretty along the lines of Frontier City, so I'll probably go a similar alley as I did to them. If in, say, 10 to 15 years, another opportunity pops up to put another decent family coaster in here for cheap, I think it's an opportunity that you take. But nothing really more than that. I don't think it's worth it. Options you could do are a Zamperla family coaster, a Vekoma family boomerang, or maybe a Wild Mouse. I'll probably stick with the Vekoma family boomerang just because we're seeing them pop up all over the new Six Flags chain, but I think 2040 is probably the earliest we could see it. Prior to Bobcat, their newest roller coaster was from 2005. So yeah, 20-year gap. So 2040 may sound crazy, but I do think that that's the realistic timeline here. So for Great Escape, I'll go, if anything at all, a Vekoma family boomerang in 2040. Up next is Six Flags Magic Mountain, and they are joining Great Adventure in that we know that a 2027 roller coaster is coming. We probably know even more details about the Magic Mountain one than we do Great Adventures, as we know that it will be a Vekoma Thrill Glider. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically a moto coaster but underneath the track flying style. So this will be Magic Mountain's second coaster in the flying position and their first major thrill coaster from Vekoma. Roadrunner Express is technically from Vekoma, but this is a different class of ride we're talking here. I am very interested to see how the Vekoma Thrill Glider turns out, as if it goes well, it could be an option for many other parks in this chain. We should also get a better idea of what this ride would actually look like when we get more details announced this summer. But just like Great Adventure, I'm just going to chalk 2027 up to already being confirmed and move on to the next possible roller coaster here. Just like Six Flags Great America, this park has been getting very frequent investments. They've gotten major thrill coasters in 2027, 2022, 2020, 2015, and 2013. Interestingly enough, that's alternating gaps of 2 years, 5 years, 2 years, 5 years, although West Coast Racers in 2020 technically was supposed to open in 2019. While I wouldn't bet on the 5-2-5-2 pattern of investment continuing under the new management, I am very confident that this park will remain heavily invested in, with the glitz and glamour of LA surrounding it, and more importantly, this is one of Six Flags' only properties with the ability to operate all year. And more operating days equals mo money. I don't think 2029 is going to happen for a new roller coaster, but I think 2030 or 2031 is very reasonable. Now let's discuss what it could be. First of all, I think it has to go in the old Superman Escape from Krypton plot, as that midway is almost falling apart, and they have to make a final decision on what they're going to do with the structure of it. I know there's been a lot of chatter about how badly the park wants to keep Lex Luthor, but they cannot leave this area and ride the exact way that it is. Demolish as much of Superman as you can while keeping Lex Luthor in operation, because right now it literally does feel like there is a big abandoned ride in the middle of the park. Personally, I would like to see them just cut bait with Lex Luthor, destroy the whole structure, and start fresh. And when you start fresh, personally, I would love to see the Zamperla triple launch, as it would fit perfectly on the plot left behind by Superman. Well, maybe not perfectly, as Top Thrill 2 is a little bit fatter and longer than Superman, but if you just put the top hat or spike where the ramp is that goes underneath full throttle, you could probably fit that here and make it work. The concept here is pretty simple. Replace your old crappy 400-footer with something that's way better and more technologically advanced. Unrealistic, but a possibility and would be a great fit. Another one that kind of fits into that category is the B&M Giga Coaster. Enthusiasts have been clamoring for years for this to happen, and now that this park is owned by Legacy Cedar Fair Management, it actually has a chance. With Superman Escape from Krypton closed and its only 200-plus foot coaster being Goliath, Six Flags Magic Mountain has a serious need of height, and both the Giga and Zamperla triple launch would accomplish that. The Giga would also add some floater airtime, which Magic Mountain also doesn't really have a ton of. However, Magic Mountain kind of has a theme of just spamming down medium-sized thrill coasters and going for quantity over quality, and there are plenty of roller coasters that Magic Mountain could do that exact same thinking with. Just to name a few, a modern Vekoma sit-down coaster, tilting or otherwise, a Mack launch coaster, spinning or otherwise, an Intamin multi-launch, preferably with a spike, a B&M surf coaster, and my least favorite of all of them, a B&M dive coaster. The dive coaster would be the one I would want to see least, as I'm just really tired of Six Flags / Cedar Fair spending so much money on them, and the build quality of them has been terrible recently. We've laid out all the possible models, now it's decision time. I think the most realistic thing I can see coming here is the Vekoma Tilt Coaster, as I just really envision these popping up at a lot of these parks in the next 5 to 10 years. But throwing away realism and going with best fit, I still think a Top Thrill 2 clone would be the perfect replacement for Superman Escape from Krypton. Tough decision this one, but I think I'm going to split between realism and wishful thinking and go with the B&M Giga Coaster. For very similar reasons as Six Flags Great America, I just see the old Cedar Fair management style creeping in and imposing its will on Six Flags Magic Mountain by installing a Giga Coaster there like it had at all the old legacy Cedar Fair parks. I still really want that Top Thrill 2 clone though, and if Six Flags Entertainment does decide to do another one, I would want it to be here, but I think the B&M Giga in 2030 is just too realistic to pass up. Next up is Six Flags Mexico, and funny enough, as I'm recording this video, today was the day where they just had their media day for Speedway Stunt Coaster, their new for 2026 Vekoma Family Boomerang. As you can tell in the previous portions of this video, I'm a big fan of the Vekoma Family Boomerang as a family coaster, and I think this is a very welcome addition to Six Flags Mexico and really helps bolster their family coaster lineup. However, this probably kicks the can even further down the road for Six Flags Mexico getting a new thrill coaster, as the last one they got was Medusa Steel Coaster in 2014, unless you count S&S free spins of the 4D variety. So unfortunately, even though it's already been 12 years since their last major thrill coaster, I think the waiting will have to continue. Unfortunately, I have not had the pleasure of visiting Six Flags Mexico yet, but from what I've heard, this park pulls numbers attendance-wise. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that Six Flags Entertainment is going to start investing a ton in it, as they could view this park as a property that will perform well no matter how much investment they put into it. So for their next coaster, I'm looking at 2032 and beyond, maybe even later than that. Sorry, Six Flags Mexico fans. Enough doom and gloom, let's talk about this park's coaster lineup. I've heard various things about Medusa Steel Coaster, but Captain Coaster has it ranked 70th right now, which puts it right on the cusp of being an elite roller coaster in my opinion. At minimum, it at least fills the RMC and ejector airtime hole. Then you have Superman El Ultimo Escape, and while it definitely profiles as a co-star, it does have a cult following that thinks it's an absolutely elite roller coaster and an elite co-star to Medusa Steel Coaster. Behind these two though, there are only question marks, with an S&S 4D free spin, a bunch of family coasters, and a Dark Knight Wild Mouse clone. So for Six Flags Mexico, I don't think you really have to shoot for the stars with this next thrill coaster, just something that can back up the top two that you already have. If it ends up being a star, great, but I don't think it necessarily has to, which is why the number one place I would look for this park is replacing their current Batman the Ride Vekoma SLC with a modern B&M invert. This is one of only a few parks in the entire chain that does not have any roller coaster from B&M, so why not keep it classic and throw it back to the invert? Get this park some classic cookie cutter inversions that aren't on old school Vekomas. For me personally, I really would worry about the post-2020 B&M rattle, but obviously that hasn't stopped Six Flags Entertainment from going to B&M for a lot of their more recent projects. Another option here for Six Flags Mexico would be a launch coaster, as they do not currently have one. Period. Your big three contenders here are going to be Intamin, Premier, and Mac, and from there it really just comes down to price tag and what exactly you want your launch coaster to focus on. Do you want a tall top hat? Do you want ejector airtime? Do you want fancy maneuvers? Do you want lots of inversions? Do you want a mix of all three of those things? For Six Flags Mexico, I think the Intamin would be the clear best fit, but I don't know guys. I just can't see it. Another option I would really like here is the Vekoma Tilt Coaster. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about why this is going to be a fit, since I've already covered it so much in this video, because like I said at the very beginning, I will be talking about this for a lot of parks, because I think it's just one that Six Flags Entertainment would love for the gimmick and overall ride experience. Funny enough, Siren's Curse was actually going to be built at Six Flags Mexico before it was moved to Cedar Point. So clearly corporate thought it was a good idea once upon a time, and it would be a cool full circle moment if Six Flags Mexico ended up getting a tilt coaster after their original one was stolen from them. So here are our options. A B&M invert, or honestly a wing or dive would work too, a Vekoma tilt coaster, and a launch coaster from really any of the big three manufacturers that make them right now. For me personally for this park, I would absolutely go with the Intamin Blitz coaster, especially one that has a spike and a fast switch track, like Pantheon or Two Tatis. But if I put myself in Six Flags Entertainment's shoes, I think for a park like this that has a steady attendance base, I think they're going to want to go for something reliable, crowd-pleasing, and something that could last at this park for a very long time with no technical issues. So that for me would be a B&M invert, which would either join or replace the current Vekoma SLC that the park has. I would really love to see the Intamin Blitz coaster here, but I just think a B&M invert is so much more likely that I feel like I'm forcing myself to predict it here. I feel like in order for this to happen, it would have to be a light year of investment for Six Flags Entertainment, and I haven't predicted anything in 2033 yet, so I'll predict that this park will add a B&M invert in 2033. Moving on, we have Six Flags New England. Starting with the good news, they have two star-level attractions, one being a Hyper and one being an RMC, and those two alone fill a lot of lineup holes. Wicked Cyclone is the star, it's an RMC, it has ejector airtime, it has inversions, and it's a long ride. Superman is the co-star. Being a Hyper, it has a big drop, lots of floater airtime, some unique elements and some light theming, and a twister section at the end that adds some even more flair. These two top two couldn't be any more different from one another, and they are a great foundation to build off as Six Flags New England continues to build its lineup. Now we get to the bad news, and Six Flags New England really has nothing behind these two to help support them. The best they can do is Batman the Dark Knight, which is one of the weaker B&M floorless coasters. After that, you have the Joker and probably Quantum Accelerator once it opens. So, my goal here for Six Flags New England is to get them another supporting cast thrill coaster. Surprisingly, the first place I would look is B&M. A lot of these other parks in this chain have multiple B&Ms that go upside down, but Six Flags New England only has one, and it's one of the weaker ones, like I said. I would be really skeptical to do this unless B&M really proves to me that they can go back to their pre-2020 build quality, but still, if B&M can actually execute these rides well for the first time since 2020 really, I think of Wing, Dive, or Invert would all be great fits here at Six Flags New England. I really do think this is one of the only parks left in the chain where a looping B&M addition makes sense. A large part of me would just rip out Riddler Revenge and replace it with a modern B&M invert in the style of Banshee. Another option here would be to go with a thrilling launch coaster. They are opening Quantum Accelerator in 2026, which is launch, but that reads more of a family coaster to me. So I would consider going with a well-rounded launch coaster as their next thrill coaster, whether it be from Intamin, Premier, or Mac, like we discussed, for Fiesta, Texas. In fact, I think specifically a Premier launch coaster would do really well here in the style of Alpenfury, just because it really has that inversion focus, and while Wicked Cyclone has inversions, I wouldn't say its main focus is inversions. And now, the obvious solution to needing both a B&M and a launch coaster is to go with the B&M Launch Wing Coaster in the style of Rapterra. But that's just the problem. Rapterra just is not very good, and probably costs too much money for what it is. However though, if you went in the style of Thunderbird, where it's glass smooth, has big swooping elements in the beginning, and finishes with compact near-miss elements, then you could have a real winner on your hands. So just to summarize, I'm between tearing out Riddler Revenge for a new B&M invert, a B&M Launch Wing Coaster, and a Premier Rides launch coaster. Before I pick between those three, let's talk about when we could see this. Quantum Accelerator technically is not a thrill coaster, but it probably did have a pretty big budget. Thus, for a new thrill coaster, I can see the can being kicked even further down the road than it already has been, as Wicked Cyclone in 2015 was the last time they got one. I'm also very intrigued to see how the new chain will treat Six Flags New England, as I really have no idea what they think of it. Previously, Six Flags didn't show much love to this park, but it did show enough love that it got two really good roller coasters, and I don't see what about the location or the land or any of those factors would play a part in this not being a park that they would invest in. Still though, I think the 2030 to 2032 time period would be when we could see this park's next big thrill coaster. In no universe should it have taken 15 years to add a thrill coaster after Wicked Cyclone, but hey, here we are. For my final decision, I know Cedar Fair / Six Flags Entertainment loves them. I just cannot trust B&M that they'll build something more similar to Thunderbird opposed to Rapterra, so I'm just going to go with the safe option and know that I'm going to get a potential star attraction in the Premier launch coaster, and I'll have that come to Six Flags New England in 2032. Up next is Six Flags Over Georgia, and they kind of have a similar situation to both Mexico and New England, but they actually have looping B&Ms. They have a Batman clone, a Superman Ultimate Flight clone, one of the best B&M stand-ups, and a classic Schwarzkopf that has two inversions. So they do not need another B&M. They also have the Hypercoaster hole filled and the RMC hole filled, although their Hyper is significantly above average, whereas their RMC is below average. What they don't have, though, is a top-tier launch coaster. So again, I'm going back to Mac, Intamin, and Premier, maybe even Vekoma. Technically, they did just get an Intamin shuttle coaster in Georgia Gold Rusher, but I'm really not counting that as I'm talking about a full layout Intamin launch coaster here. I did want to predict an Intamin Blitz coaster at some point in this video, and Over Georgia and Over Texas are really the only reasonable options I have left. And I think I would prefer it here because Six Flags Over Texas already has Mr. Freeze, whereas Six Flags Over Georgia really has nothing in terms of full layout launch coasters. The more likely candidate is probably Mac or Premier, but I really just want to predict the Intamin Blitz coaster once because, well, it's one of the top two models in the industry right now, and I really want to see one at Six Flags, even if it may not be likely to happen. You're not going to get Velocicoaster level length here, but I think something like Pantheon or Two Tatis really would be a great fit and be an affordable price tag. Some other models that could be a good fit, the Vekoma Tilt Coaster, obviously. If Six Flags is feeling ambitious with this park, a B&M Giga. I'm not going to beat around the bush for too much longer, as it's plainly obvious that this park really needs a launch coaster. Not much more to it than that, really. As for WED, I think it could still be a little bit because they did just get Georgia Gold Rusher, even if that was a little bit of a smaller investment. Looking at what I predicted so far, the only thing I have in 2031 is Great America's B&M Giga, and you can probably squeeze this in along with that. So for Six Flags Over Georgia, I'm going to go with an Intamin Blitz coaster in 2031. It may be unlikely, but I really want to see this chain take a chance on at least one of these. Up next, we have Six Flags Over Texas, and they are the only park in this chain that is getting a 2026 major thrill coaster in Tormenta Rampaging Run. 2026 is overall looking like a very down year for new coaster installations, but this is the one exception to that. Now, with this 2026 edition, I have probably a lot more questions than answers, with the main one being, why would you spend so much money on another B&M dive coaster when your last two installations of them have plain sucked? Oh, freaking Six Flags and their incompetence. Take the money that is being spent on Tormenta and go into the open coaster market and look for a new model. And I literally think that Six Flags Entertainment picked the very worst one for the money that they're spending on this. Probably the only thing I can think of that would have been more expensive is a traditional B&M Giga coaster. But you probably could have gotten an Intamin Blitz coaster, Mack Launch coaster, Premier Rides Launch coaster, Vekoma Tilt coaster, all for less money than what you're spending on this. I understand the dive coaster gimmick, but with their current build quality, if this thing has the same rattle as Iron Menace, then this is just unforgivable investment from Six Flags. And now they've reset the clock on Six Flags Over Texas, where it's probably going to be another 10 years before they get another thrill installation. Luckily for Six Flags Over Texas, I don't see any glaring holes, as Tormenta does at least fill the role of having a giga height roller coaster that every big park should have. To try to start filling some holes, I do wonder about Mr. Freeze and how long of a life it has left, and if they could look into replacing it with a modern launch coaster from Premier, Mack, or Intamin. If they do go that route, I think the Intamin multi-launch with a spike is the perfect fit here, but I do have Mr. Freeze on my bucket list, and I would really rather them not close it, and it's very well loved in the community, so I want to leave that one alone for right now. Here's one I haven't talked about yet in this video, and I think this would be a fun site to trial it at, would be the Mach Striker coaster. I feel like you can make the same case for this one as you do the Vekoma Tilt coaster, and that it would be a fit at pretty much every Six Flags Entertainment park because it does stuff that you really can't replicate anywhere else in your lineup. But I think something like the vertical launch is something that Six Flags Entertainment would be very interested in for the gimmick. My main concern for this one is that I think the price tag is conducive to a big park, but the capacity is conducive to a small park. So I'm just not sure where exactly it would fit into any of Six Flags' plans. This is why I think Six Flags Over Texas would be a potential good fit for the first one of these. I think Six Flags would be comfortable putting something this expensive there, and you wouldn't have the capacity issue like if this were at Cedar Point or Canada's Wonderland. Then obviously you have the Vekoma Tilt coaster for all the reasons I've already discussed in this video. Over Texas is nothing like it, the layout is great, and it should be very reliable and very low maintenance moving forward. So which of these will I actually go with? Well, to my surprise, I've only predicted 2 Vekoma Tilts so far in this video, and I just think putting one here makes too much sense, even if they are getting a dive in 2026. In all likelihood, it would be either the first or second best roller coaster in the park. Six Flags Over Texas doesn't have a next-gen Vekoma, and they offer their own unique sensation, so it's really a no-brainer to me. As for when, Six Flags Over Texas did New Texas Giant in 2011, Aquaman in 2023, although that was delayed by a few years, and now they're getting Tormenta in 2026. So for them, I'll anticipate roughly 2034 time frame. So Six Flags Over Texas, Vekoma Tilt coaster in 2034. Up next is Six Flags St. Louis. Six Flags St. Louis is one where I'm very skeptical if Six Flags Entertainment feels the need to hold on to it going forward. I think this park has got potential, and it's got a fun lineup right now for families, but overall, I just don't think the lineup right now is conducive to Six Flags Entertainment feeling the need to keep it. In fact, going forward in terms of investment, I think this park would be better off being sold to another theme park operator than to stay under Six Flags Entertainment. I think this park does have some serious potential, and it needs some investment to help realize it, and I don't think that investment is going to come from Six Flags Entertainment. I'm not anti or pro Six Flags selling this park. I just want this park to stay as a theme park and get as much investment as it can, because, well, more investment equals a better park and more fun experience for the people of St. Louis. And with Six Flags being in charge, I'm just not sure those investments are going to happen. But let's say for now Six Flags Entertainment does keep this park. What direction could they look to go in for their next roller coaster? I think the first and obvious choice is to RMC Boss. That may upset some people who really want to see this park's focus on wooden roller coasters, but the reality is this park desperately needs a star, and that is probably the cheapest way to get one. I kind of feel bad for St. Louis because it feels like this really should have happened in the 2014 to 2018 time period when Six Flags was just popping up RMCs at all their parks that had crappy wooden roller coasters. So while it should have happened back then, I don't think it's too late now and that you should still consider this option. It's not easy to get a superstar roller coaster on the cheaper end, and RMC Boss would do just that. If you don't want to do that, though, I understand, and there's a lot of other directions Six Flags St. Louis could go in, like, for example, something else from B&M to go along with Batman the Ride. If it were up to me, actually, I think a B&M Hyper would be a really good fit here. Even if it was a minier one like Mako or Candymonium, I can really see that excelling here. You would get a tall, traditional first drop, which they don't have, a super smooth ride experience, hopefully. You never know with B&M, but the last 2 Hyper trains that they built, Candymonium and Orion, are glass smooth, so I still hold out hope for that model. B&M Hyper, never gonna happen, but the ideal fit in this lineup if you ask me. Just like over Texas, I'm going to keep my eye on this Mr. Freeze clone to see how it holds up, and if it doesn't hold up, bring in Premier and have them do another modern launch coaster. I say Premier here just because of the price tag is going to be lower than Mack and Intamin. Just like for over Texas though, I'm probably not going to predict this just because I don't want to see Mr. Freeze close. One more final fit that I think would be really nice for this park is an RMC Raptor. This would get this park an RMC full of ejector airtime without RMCing one of the current wooden roller coasters. Would a Raptor be as good as a potential conversion of Boss? No, probably not, but I still think it would get the job done for this park in terms of adding a potential star future attraction. I think the price tag on it would be really good, especially if you went with either the Stomp Pilot or Jersey Devil clone. So there are our options. Which one do I like best? I gotta say, if you don't want an RMC Boss, I really like an RMC Raptor here. I feel like RMC built the Raptor model just for cases like this. bring the ejector and variety goodness of RMC to a park that may not have the budget for a full-scale iBox. As for when, this park's track record of new additions is so spotty that there's really no pattern I can go off of, so I'm going to have to pull the good old-fashioned RMC Raptor at some point for Six Flags St. Louis. Up next, we have Valleyfair. I think this is another one that could be sold, but I think it would be less likely for this one to be sold than St. Louis, because I think this park has less overall potential, and like Darien Lake, I think Six Flags Entertainment might be okay with just leaving this park as is and letting it fend for itself. This park is currently ranked 73rd in my model for coaster lineups, but I think Six Flags Entertainment is okay with that, and this park will never ever be a big hitter for them. So for which coaster they could use next, I think it's pretty simple. 9 years ago at this point, Coaster Studios made a video about which Cedar Fair parks should get at RMC, and when he got to Valleyfair, he said he would rather see a nice B&M coaster come here. And brother, I could not agree more. This park doesn't have an invert, a hyper, a flirless, no nothing. This is one of only 2 Cedar Fair parks joining Michigan's Adventure to not have a B&M. And I'm not sure why something like Worlds of Fun would get one, but not this park, as the two always run together in my mind. I think the invert would make a lot of sense, or a wing, and begrudgingly, if one park were to get a B&M dive coaster, specifically a mini dive machine, I think this one has a good case for it. But man, if B&M screws up and produces a rattly mess just like Iron Menace was for Valleyfair's first major investment in 19 years, I'd probably be equally annoyed at this investment as I was at Iron Menace. So B&M, if you're listening, this park really needs one of your looping roller coasters, but if you're just going to produce them a piece of crap, then don't even bother and I'll just move on to another manufacturer. B&M though could still probably be pretty pricey for this park, so I want to consider some alternative options. At a much cheaper rate and probably a better ride, you have the RMC Raptor. For very similar reasons as Six Flags St. Louis, just very good ride quality to price tag ratio for this one. Another option you could probably get on the cheap is the Vekoma Wildcat. Just one of the smaller Vekomas, and Vekoma probably has a cheaper going rate than B&M, so just keeping it small scale in the form of Vekoma Wildcat probably is in this park's price range. Perhaps maybe even a small scale tilt coaster. A small Vekoma and an RMC Raptor would both get this park a star with a cheap price tag. Then finally, this park's only real launch coaster is Steel Venom, so just getting them the cheapest, smallest footprint launch coaster possible. Maybe something for Premier, but not like Alpenfury, probably more along the lines of Icebreaker. Or you could probably also go with Vekoma and get something like Big Bear Mountain with a shorter track length. I just think this park is in desperate need of a full layout launch coaster. This park has absolutely no recent track record of major investments, so me predicting a specific year would just be a total shot in the dark. So I'm just going to pull out the at some point again in hopes that this park eventually does get what I'm actually predicting for them, rather than getting nothing at all. I hate to say it, but I really just see the vision here for the B&M Mini Dive Machine, but for this prediction, I'm not going to do the people of Minnesota dirty like that, because if you got Iron Menace after waiting all these years for a major roller coaster, I would genuinely feel terrible for you guys. So instead, I'll put you guys in a perfect world, and let's pretend that Six Flags Entertainment comes to their senses and actually learns that a Vekoma Tilt coaster is a way better model than B&M Dive Coaster. If you're thinking that a Vekoma Tilt may be unrealistic for this park, basically think of this investment like Iron Menace, but a tilt instead of a dive. Same gimmick, same size, same probably overall price tag, but you're just going to get such a better ride experience that is going to ultimately score so much better on Captain Coaster than the B&M Dive. So for Valleyfair, while I would love for you guys to see a B&M Looper, I am simply just not trusting them right now with my money, and I really hope that you guys do eventually get something, and when you do, I think it will be a small-scale Vekoma Tilt coaster. And then finally, we have Worlds of Fun. And Worlds of Fun is probably another one that's on the chopping block. My theory is that Six Flags Entertainment will do a study between Worlds of Fun and Six Flags St. Louis and will decide which one will be better for them going forward. Then one will be sold and one will be kept. There's actually a striking amount of similarities between these two parks, as both are located outside major Missouri cities. They're ranked 52nd and 61st in coaster lineup respectively, only separated by about a point and a half. So which one stays and which one goes? I really don't know. Should this one stay? This park is really in the middle ground between Dorney Park and Valleyfair in terms of coaster lineup for legacy Cedar Fair parks. They all have the foundation of the Morgan Hypercoaster, but Dorney has 3 B&Ms and Valleyfair has 0. This park has 1, Patriot, a B&M invert. The first place I want to look for a new roller coaster is at Timberwolf, and man, when I was getting my ducks in a row for this video, I had no idea the lore that was behind 2025 Timberwolf. I remember hearing that it was set to be closed for the entire 2025 season, which led me and many others to believe that an RMC or GCI retrack would happen. I was really excited about this, as I think either of those would have been a great fit at Worlds of Fun, but it turns out that it was just some regular inspection mistake, and halfway through the 2025 season, the park said, "Psych," and reopened Timberwolf for the remainder of the season. In a world where Six Flags often overpromises, it's pretty stunning to see them just change their plans to have a ride closed for the entire season. Even if nothing was wrong with it, I figured they would just stay true to their word and not put any money towards reopening the thing. So I guess good on the park for going above and beyond for its guests, but at the same time, it leaves a weird taste in your mouth realizing that nothing is going to happen to Timberwolf now. now, or at least so it seems. While I haven't gotten to experience it yet, my sources do tell me that Timberwolf is in fact still terrible, so the first place I would look is either doing a GCI retrack, an RMC 208 retrack, or a full RMC iBox conversion of Timberwolf. With the whole fiasco of 2025 Timberwolf, this option is looking significantly less likely now, but I still think it makes the most sense in terms of overall fit. Just looking at the Legacy Cedar Fair parks, 2 RMC conversions is not enough given how many crappy wooden roller coasters there are to go around. Timberwolf definitely fits into that category, and the opportunity to add a really good roller coaster on the cheap should be seized. I know Silver Dollar City has an RMC and it's not too far away, but I think with the Joe Draves and iBox style compared to the topper track of Outlaw Run, I think this could be different enough and ultimately better than Outlaw Run. So that's an option that I personally firmly believe should be on the table. Just like Valleyfair, you could go launch coaster here, but again, very small footprint in order to be realistic. Premier, Vekoma, and maybe even Mac could all probably get you something small enough that the price tag would be reasonable and give it a chance to come to this park. This may also be even a better fit than the RMC. Speaking of RMC, you could go RMC Raptor here, give some injector airtime, a steep first drop, and have that good price tag, especially if you get one of the clone versions. Also on the table would be the mini Vekoma tilt coaster that I have coming to Valleyfair. Again, Iron Menace style investment here, keeping it small and reasonable, but getting a gimmicky first drop roller coaster that will really get the GP in, and just get that layout that would make enthusiasts want to return to this park more. So with all those options laid out, I really don't know which direction to go. I think what throws me off the most about this park is the addition of Zambezi Zinger in 2023. While this is a nice, unique addition, I never would have guessed that this park would have gone back to GCI for its first major investment in a while, when they already have a pretty good GCI in Prowler. I know the target audience is a little bit different, but I still think they could have gone for something that was a little bit more different than something that they already have. Also with Zambezi Zinger, I think you're going to get a pretty big gap after it, since it was not a small amount of money used to build that thing, so I think we're looking at 2033 at the absolute earliest for whatever I predict here. So, which of my models to pick here? So, I'm going to go no on the RMC Raptor because I already predicted it for St. Louis. I'm going to say no on the Vekoma Tilt as well, just because I don't want enthusiasts to get exhausted of them. So that leaves doing something to Timberwolf and the small-scale thrilling launch coaster. I let RMC Fever consume me at Six Flags Great Adventure, so I won't let it consume me here, and I'll go with a Premier Rides launch coaster, probably on the scale halfway between Alpenfury and Icebreaker. I would love to throw money out of the picture here and go with an Intamin like to Tatis, but the realism is consuming me whole, unfortunately. So for a Worlds of Fun, I'm going to go with a Premier Rides launch coaster in 2035. Now, let's go through and recap every prediction that we just made on a timeline. First, we have the 2 roller coasters that we know are coming in 2027, and those are the Mac coming to Six Flags Great Adventure and the Vekoma Thrill Glider coming to Six Flags Magic Mountain. For my first real prediction of the video, and since they're running a 2027 teaser campaign, I predicted that a Vekoma Tilt Coaster will come to Carowinds. Starting off 2028, I predicted that a Mac Extreme Spinner will come to Kings Island. In addition, a Mac Multi-Launch will come to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. In 2029, I predict that a Vekoma Tilt Coaster will come to Canada's Wonderland, a Zamperla Wild Mouse will come to Six Flags Darien Lake, and my most bold prediction of the video, in my opinion, a Mac Extreme Spinner will come to Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. 2030 would be an extremely big year for Six Flags Entertainment under this scheme, but it would be years like this that are necessary for this chain to stay relevant among the average consumer. If this is too much investment in 1 year, you can probably defer one of these to 2031 or 2032. In 2030, I have the Vekoma Flying Coaster coming to Cedar Point, the Vekoma Wildcat coming to Knott's Berry Farm, the B&M Giga coming to Six Flags Magic Mountain, and finally, the RMC Hyper Hybrid coming to Six Flags Great Adventure. In 2031, I have the B&M Giga coming to Six Flags Great America and the Intamin Blitz Coaster coming to Six Flags Over Georgia. In 2032, I have the Premier Rides Launch Coaster coming to Six Flags New England and the Mac Multi-Launch Coaster coming to Kings Dominion. In 2033 and 2034, this is when I can really start to see parks that are already on this list start double dipping, such as Cedar Point, Magic Mountain, and basically all the big boys that are going to get more frequent investment. In 2033, I predicted a Vekoma Family Boomerang to come to Frontier City and a B&M Invert to come to Six Flags Mexico. For 2034, I predicted a Vekoma Tilt Coaster to come to Six Flags Over Texas, 8 years after Tormenta. For 2035 and beyond, I have a pair of Premier Rides launch coasters coming to Worlds of Fun in 2035 and Dorney Park in 2036. For the other tab, I would consider these unlikely investments, but I would be extremely happy if these parks got these additions in basically any year. I have RMC La Monster at La Ronde, a Vekoma Family Boomerang at Michigan's Adventure, an RMC Raptor at Six Flags St. Louis, and a Vekoma Tilt Coaster at Valleyfair. I know this may seem like a lot, but you have to remember, this is Six Flags and Cedar Fair combined, so they have to at least invest near the level that they would have if they were still independent. So just keep in mind, while this may seem ambitious, we need this chain to start showing some ambition in its investments. Breaking it down by manufacturer, I have 1 from Zamperla, 1 from Intamin, 3 from RMC. Trust me guys, if I was in charge, I would build almost everything from these 2, But I wanted to keep this video realistic, and I felt like predicting 3 arms Season 1 Intamin was even pushing it a little bit. We have been given no inclination that new Six Flags / Old Cedar Fair will build anything new from these two. But because I want to see them so bad, I predicted a couple. Moving on, we have 3 from Premier Rides, 3 from B&M, and 5 from Mack. And then taking the crown, we have 9 from Vekoma. And hey, shout out Vekoma, man. They've earned it. Going from one of the worst manufacturers to the best, this is the kind of manufacturer I can see Six Flags Entertainment absolutely falling in love with. Glass smooth ride experiences, offer layouts completely different to anything that's already been on the market, and they have high standards for reliability and ride experience, all at a reasonable price tag. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun video to make, and while it went on way longer than I ever thought it would, I really enjoyed just spewing my thoughts about each park's coaster lineup and what I would like to see there next. As I mentioned several times in this video, I haven't necessarily been the happiest with the way Six Flags has been choosing to spend their money, because I think their decision making when it comes to roller coaster models is a big reason why they're in such dire straits right now. At the end of the day, these are regional theme parks, and their main draw is going to be roller coasters, whether you want to admit it or not. Literally Exhibit A, look at Six Flags America, who just closed their doors. I think the number one reason for this is because Six Flags chose bad ride models to spend their money on back in the day when they were adding to the park. Unfortunately, none of the money that they spent on any of those rides yielded a star attraction or anything that would make people want to come back. Six Flags America had one of the worst roller coaster lineups in the entire Six Flags chain, and I think not having a good roller coaster lineup is the biggest reason why the park was struggling financially and it led to its closure. I say all that to say that adding the right roller coaster models is a huge part of management, and Six Flags Entertainment has a lot of work to do to ensure that they are adding the right models that keep people coming back to their parks. That's right, coming back to their parks, not just visiting one time, riding a new edition and leaving and never coming back. Coming back to your park over and over again. Anyway, I want to give a shout out to all the people who provided footage for this video and taking time out of their park days to collect footage for people like me to use. So thank you, Thrill Report, Canopy Coaster, Airtime Thrills, El Toro Ryan, and Coaster Thrills. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day at parks to provide free footage for people like me to use. I really do love this topic, so please leave comments down below about where you think I was right and where I was wrong and what you would like to see come to these parks. Maybe I was cooking. Maybe I have no idea what people actually think about roller coasters. So go down and tell me if you think one of those things. I just want to have some good old-fashioned deliberation. And once again, if you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next one. To view my current list of roller coasters, find me on CaptainCoaster.com, username CoasterGuy. To view my coaster count, parks visited, ride stats, and a bunch of other stuff, friend me on LogRide at CoasterGuy23. To view or download any of my RideForce files, visit my profile on RideForce's DB, also at CoasterGuy23. Thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.